The Industrial Revolution, Part 3. My name is Batugul Tamam and I'm your history teacher. Let's stay together in a charismatic, attractive way because the issue of industry is not only history but it's the issue of what is going on in the present, where we are in the era of industrial capitalism. That's why we have to know the history of the Industrial Revolution. The working condition in industries. To increase production, factory owners wanted to keep their machine running as many hours as possible. As a result, workers were forced to work from sunrise to sunset. That was a very long hour of working. The aim of this long hour of working is the factory owners desire to keep their machine running for a long period of time. That was for maximizing profits. To increase production, a long working hour were introduced. The average worker spent 14 hours a day on the job and 6 days a week. This was a result that came from the desire of the factory owners to keep their machine working effectively for a long period of time. The industry also poses a new dangers for workers. With the expansion of industries, as it has its own positive outputs, positive effects, it also poses a new danger for the workers. First, factories were seldomly well lit or clean. There was issue of sanitations. Machines injure workers. These machines were rudimentary, old machines with absence of safety for workers. So machines were usually injures workers. And there was no government program to provide aid in case of injury. There is no pension, no insurance services. The government do not provide anything for the worker, as well as the factory owners do not provide or supply the workers in time of injury. And this makes the working condition in industry very difficult. The most dangerous condition often all were found in the coal mines. So one of the very harsh working condition was in the coal mines. Frequent accident and the damp conditions were the usual condition in coal mines. The constant breathing of coal dust made the average miner's life span 10 years shorter than that of the other workers. So the workers, the laborers in the coal mine, they may live less than the other workers in the other sector of the industry because of the effect of the coal dusts that directly relate with the breathings. This was one of the dangers of the industrial revolution that the industry brought to the society and its workers. Labor exploitation. Many women and children were employed in the mining industry because they were the cheapest source of labor. As to maximize their profit, the factory owners have to keep workers as much as possible with a low salary. As a result, for a very little amount of wage, they employed women and children. The salary paid for women and children is much more less than that of adult men. That was the reason. And this was one of the bad working conditions that lead to the exploitation of workers' labor. Here we have some pictures that shows where as left bottom there was children at this age. They were exploited. They were working for a very little amount of wages, much more less than that of the adult men. Here is women's at the top left. At the same time, because of being a woman, their labor was exploited and paid a minor wages. Here is in the upper right corner, that was dominantly a women workers, and at the lower right, there was women and the children pulling the carts of coal mine. That was the working condition, the exploitation of child and women laborers during the early industrial revolution. The other issue that rises with industrial revolution was a class tension that began to grow. The working class was suffered from poverty, especially in Britain. As a result, class tension was one of the result of industrial revolutions. The factory owners class. One of the class was the factory owners class. The industrial revolution created enormous amount of wealth in the nation, and most of this wealth went for factory owners. The factory owners, they took most of the wealth. The factory owners, shippers, and the merchants, these were people who shares some of the wealth that the industrial revolution created. The factory owners, shippers, merchants, these people were part of the growing middle class. So we have a growing middle class, which includes this group of people. The middle class, a social class that made up of a skilled worker, professional, business people, and wealthy farmers. So when we say middle class, we are referring to skilled workers, professionals, business people, and wealthy farmers. These were the middle class. The new middle class transformed the social structure of Great Britain. The old social structure was transformed with the new social structure that emerged with the development of industrial revolution. The top position the British society had occupied in the past by landowners and aristocrats. This was before the beginning of industrial revolution, and before the consolidation of industrial revolution, the societal hierarchy was at the top was held by landowners and aristocrats. The new middle class that emerged with the industrial revolution, in some way, the factory owners, merchants, and the bankers grew wealthier than the landlords and the aristocrats. So a new class was emerged. So the old system was transformed with the rise of a new middle class. This new middle class constitutes factory owner, merchant, and bankers. So the new middle class grew wealthier than the landlords and the aristocrats. This new middle class is wealthier, but in the old system, it was the landlords and the aristocrats who take control the hierarchy of the social status. Now this was begun to be transformed. Important social distinction divided into two wealthy classes. We have to see the new middle class into two groups, into two categories. The first one is the upper middle class, and the second one is the lower middle classes. That was merged with the consolidation of industrial capitalism. The upper middle class constitutes first government employees, doctors, lawyers, managers of factories, mines, and shops. These mine owners, shop owners, factory manager, lawyer, doctors, government employee, they took the upper middle class in the new social hierarchies. The lower middle class includes toolmakers, mechanical drafters, printers. These people enjoyed a comfortable standard of living. Even they are not equal to the upper middle class, they are better than the ordinary society in their standard of living. So we have two middle classes, that is the upper middle class and the lower middle class. The upper middle class constitutes government employee, doctor, lawyer, managers, mines, and shops, whereas The lower middle class constitutes toolmakers, mechanical drafters, and printers. These people enjoy a comfortable standard of living. During the year 1800 to 1850s, laborers or the working class saw a little improvement in their living and working condition. Even if the Industrial Revolution began to consolidate, the Industrial Revolution, the new system began to emanate a large amount of wealth, money, the laborer or the working class. They didn't enjoy a standard living as the upper middle classes. During the year, the beginning of 19th century to the mid of 19th century, the laborers or working class, they wished their livelihood disappeared as machines replaced them. In frustration, some smashed the machine they thought were putting them out of work. So that was the workers began to be disappointed because first the wells were regenerating, the middle class were getting wealthier, but they are still not getting the fair share from industrial revolutions gain. They have watched when their life was disappeared because a new machine replaces their labor force. From time to time, they are getting out of job, out of work, out of livelihood. As a result of this frustration, some workers began to destroy machines. That's meant to keep their work. The struggle of the working class, the Luddite movement. The Luddite movement was named after Need Luddite. They were probably laborers said to have destroyed weaving machineries around 1779. Here, Need Ludd was a famous weaver in Britain, but later on we have seen the first industrial revolution, the first that was modernized industry. The leading in the industrial revolution was the textile industry, which employs a huge amount of laborers, large number of laborers, and at the same time the textile industry modernized rapidly fast than any other sectors of the industry. It was the forefront industries and the industrial revolution. When a new machine began to replace human beings, as that was the characteristics features of industrial revolution, disappointed workers or laborers, they staged their first uprising, their first revolt. That was called the Luddite movement, and the movement was named after the famous weaver now called Need Luddite. They were probably the workers. We have said that it was started in 1779. That's the last quarter of the 19th century. The Luddite movement, the writing workers, attacked the whole factory in northern England from 1811 to 1816. They destroyed labor-saving machines because these machines were getting them to lose their job, forcing them out of the work, out of career. That's why they destroyed the machines. During the Luddite movement, most of the time, waves of workers rioted outside the factories, mainly because of poor living and working condition. So the poor living condition, the poor working condition, the bad working condition in their factories, and their livelihood forced laborers, workers of the Industrial Revolution, to start riot and mobs, most of the time outside their own factory. emissions. See you next time. We'll come again and the fourth part of the Industrial Revolution.